Well, I'm here with Peter Georgiady, the executive director for at least for the next few months, an association called the Golf Collectors Society. And I thought giving Peter's expertise not only on the collection of golf equipment, paraphernalia, and things like that. He's also an avid collector himself and has been around the game of golf for longer than we'd like to talk
60 years.
So I thought I would start off by saying, tell us a little bit about yourself, Peter.
Well, I grew up in Milwaukee, learned how to play golf on the public courses there, played golf through college just casually, and then went to graduate school in Scotland and became an avid golf historian and historical player.
Yes, you got your degree where? And
Miami University, Oxford, Ohio.
And then went to law school in Scotland?
University of Dundee.
Which is about how far away from St. Andrews?
12 miles north, 45 minutes on country bus.
Okay. So how did you get into collecting golf clubs? I guess that's what you enjoyed collecting the most.
An old Scotsman that was a friend of mine while I was at university there gave me my first antique golf club. And then my dad gave me a couple more that he had found at a flea market, and all of a sudden I had 3, and that's a collection. And I got up to 700 or 800 at one point. I've bought and sold and dispersed, but I've been doing this for over 40 years.
Any set of clubs you focused on? Or
the core of my collection today is iron-headed clubs made before 1880.
Okay.
In those days, you had cleek makers that made iron-headed clubs. They were essentially blacksmiths. And you had club makers who made wooden-headed clubs, and they came from the ranks of cabinet makers and wheelwrights and people that worked with wood. And I like old irons better than I like old woods.
Okay. Well, would be remiss without asking, what is, in the golf collecting world, what is the Holy Grail? What's the club everybody desires to have?
The Holy Grail for most collectors is a wood club, a wood-headed club made by Hugh Philp, who worked in St. Andrews from about 1820 to about 1854. If it was me, I would like an old iron, preferably an 18th century iron. Very rare, there may be only 20 of them. They cost 5 figures these days, but those would be the holy grails for a club collector or an iron collector.
Okay, all right. So tell me a little bit about your role as executive director and where the association the society is going.
Sure. I've been a member of the society for 40 years, and
who was the founder? Not to interrupt.
Joe Murdoch in Philadelphia and Bob Kuntz from Dayton were the co-founders. They're both deceased now. They were member 1 and member 1, and I knew both of them very well. But as I said, I've been a member for 40 years, and in retirement I thought, well, being the executive director would be a pretty good gig in retirement.
Sure.
And the job came open last year, and I applied for it, and the selection committee appointed me, and I asked them, I said, who was the runner-up? And they said, we didn't even go that far.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So the members of the society just have a love for, it's not just collecting clubs and things like that.
No, and we started out as being collectors and being accumulators of stuff, and through that time we all became a little more savvy. We all became more historian-oriented in understanding what it was that we had. But the society now the tent is much larger, and it's not necessarily people that accumulate golf stuff. it's people that are architectural specialists, and people that just collect playing different courses, especially historical courses, and people that collect history and knowledge about golf history. And so it's more than just accumulating, but honestly, any golfer is already a collector. He's probably got more than one scorecard in his bag. He may have a bunch of pencils, golf balls, whatever, caps, but I think all golfers are essentially collectors in some way or another.
We talked at lunch about the association or relationship people have with clubs and why that comes about.
Yeah.
And you expressed how you got involved and why you would want to collect clubs and how it's different, I guess, with clubs now versus years gone by.
Carl, I think the main thing is that as I started to accumulate old clubs, the curiosity factor took over. Who made these clubs? Why are they marked this way? How were they constructed? What was the history of golf equipment? You know, I mean, people say, well, the first golfers were shepherds that were out with their shepherd's crooks and hitting sheep dung into holes. You know, it's like, what happened 100 years ago and 200 years ago and 300 years ago? And golf as a sport has such a lengthy history, longer than most other sports, that it just gets you thinking, and you start researching and start prying and trying to figure things out and put it all in context.
The Society does a hickory tournament or something that's coming up.
Well, we do, and one of my sidelines is that I'm the founder and the championship director of the National Hickory Championship, where we go out every year and play with 19th century equipment, 19th century rules, hopefully on a 19th century era course, and wearing appropriate attire. We're kind of like Civil War reenactors, except that Civil War reenactors know who won the battle, and when the National Hickory Championship tees off, we don't know who's going to win.
Well, Peter, tell us a little bit about the. Well, you want to end this, right? So, Peter, just tell us about the future of the Society.
Well, we're doing a name change, Carl, and we're going to be called the Golf Historians Society, the GHS instead of the GCS. And we're getting a more diverse, broader group of members. A lot of people that are interested in golf and golf history, don't necessarily want to keep a basement full of old golf clubs or books, but people that want to share the lore and the history and the love of golf and just the understanding of how old and how ancient and how historically important golf has been over the centuries.
Well, Peter, thanks for your time. Thanks for lunch, too. But actually, we're here at Mackenzie's River Grill and Pub here in Polaris. And you can hear some of that music probably coming through on this interview. Again, thanks.
My pleasure. Call me anytime.